Hey, so somebody left me a comment asking me to do a follow-up on the concept of inspired action. And so the first thing to understand, or the only thing to understand about inspired action really, is that you're not going to know when you're taking inspired action. You're not going to feel inspired, start doing something and go, ooh, I'm taking inspired action right now. By the way, I think everybody does this, I don't know. I tend to look at things that are happening and be like, is this part of it? Is this part of it? Like I had, I have some intentions about my business changing, and somebody quit last weekend. And when it happened, I was like, oh, this is part of it. This is part of it. I have no idea. The truth is I have no idea. It looks like it's part of it, but yeah, when it comes to what you're doing, when for someone who doesn't know what inspired action is, it's basically the idea that when you have a manifestation that is sort of successfully put out there and in the works, that you, as a part of the process of manifesting this thing, will take inspired action, will do things that are being directed by divine intelligence. But yeah, you won't know what those things are. Like that, inspired action is like you turn left at the stoplight instead of going straight. And that has some effect on something that you may never know, even looking back on it. So, like an example of inspired action that I think I can see in retrospect is with Matt, my significant other, Matt, who I met in 2020. He had been trying to talk to me for months, and I had just been making sort of polite conversation with him the way I do with lots of people that I talk to that I don't know online. And he just decided he felt like we belonged together. He had this idea that whatever, he had something beyond him, according to him, that is not usual for him, where he just felt like he needed to keep trying to talk to me. And he never said anything romantic or anything. It was just, kind of like trying to start conversations that didn't really go anywhere. And then, and this was all happening while other things in my life were happening that needed to happen before I could get involved with anybody. So it's all kind of perfect in that way. But one day he just decided, according to him, that he was not going to contact me again, that he had just made up this idea in his mind. And the next morning, 175 miles away, not in contact with him, just decided I had gotten a payout from the ads on my channel. And I was like, well, I don't want to keep this. I want to do something sort of charitable with it or something. So I was like, well, I think I'm going to offer everybody who I've been talking to lately a copy of Reality Transurfing. I'm just going to offer to send a copy to maybe 5 or 6 people who I was regularly in contact with, and he was one of them. And I sent him an email literally the next day, the day after he had this change of heart where he's just like, I'm not going to try to talk to her anymore. The next morning I sent him an email and asked him if he wanted a copy of the book, which he refused. But that got us talking again, and then we never stopped after that. That was the beginning of our relationship. And I took that action, and I wasn't interested in him romantically. I wasn't not, but I mean, it just wasn't, I don't know, my mind wasn't there at all. I definitely didn't do that for that reason, but something put that thought into my head, and it put us back in contact again. And that was quite literally the conversation that sort of started the whole relationship. So that, to me, is an example of inspired action. I don't know where that idea came from, but it came from somewhere, and it started this thing happening that was essentially the manifestation of my no lift a finger ultimate romantic fulfillment, which it was a very romantic beginning, and it had a whole bunch of little romantic surprises in it, and it was truly, I would say that first year of our relationship, despite the fact that it involved nursing my father to his death unexpectedly, that first year of our relationship was pretty freaking romantic, and certainly very fulfilling. So that was basically a manifestation that came to fruition. And when I look back, there is that singular event that Matt says was extremely important on his end. And I had no clue. He was one of, I think, 6 people who I sent a message to that morning and said, hey, I want to know if you want a copy of this book. I'll just send it to you. You know, I just got my YouTube payout and I want to just use it to do something good. So that's inspired action. And I had no clue. And for all I know, that wasn't even it. That wasn't even the inspired action. But that's a good, I think, example of how unconscious it is when you do things that assist your own manifestation from an inspired state, meaning it was put there by God or whatever, divine intelligence. You know, you can feel very inspired, which I think when people use the term inspired just in everyday language, they're saying they feel very like motivated and intrigued or like excited about doing something. That I don't think, in my opinion, that is not what inspired action is when it comes to manifestations. So I think doing things from an inspired place in the way we think of the word inspired, getting inspiration, acting on stuff like that, that's also very good, because that state is a really high state to be thinking from and creating from. So whether or not that has anything to do directly with some particular intention that you have, that's still a great state to be in. Anytime you can get into that state, that's great. And that's sort of like what Esther Hicks refers to as the high-flying disc. Lots of good things come from that state, but don't confuse it with the unconscious, directed by divine intelligence, inspired action that will float you to your manifestation, because it's not the same thing, in my opinion. So I hope that answered the question. And I believe it is Saturday for me right now. I just made a video for Saturday for today, but I believe it is Sunday. So it's God's day today. So I'm glad we just had this conversation about inspired action, and have a great Sunday.